hear the applause. You might know who my guest is today, too. I want to thank, first of all, the Isam Ferris Institute for allowing us to use this great new space, which someone just coined the grill of AUB campus, if you know what a grill is. So you all know our guests, so my introduction is going to be a little different. Innovative artist in the famous group Public Enemy, 2013 class of inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, innovative radio producer and author of 2 books, certainly would earn him tenure at most universities, and the list goes on. But today I want to introduce Chuck D in a different way and locate him really within the work of CASAR, the Center for American Studies and Research, and in a history of AUB. So I'll be brief here. But as we all know, in Public Enemy's most iconic song, Fight the Power, Chuck begins with a date. What is the date? 1989, which in the U.S. signaled many things in an era of ascendant neoconservatism under the many-headed hydra of Reagan and Bush. And just some of the things that I think Public Enemy was engaging with was the increased incarceration of black youth as a result of new sentencing laws justified by the war on drugs. In New York, in the very same year that the song was released, we saw the Central Park 5, which was the false arrest of 5 black youth from Harlem on false charges of rape. We also saw the appointment of Colin Powell as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was both the image of a supposedly post-racial America, but was also a budding imperialist in his own right, who would that year lead the invasion of Panama, and 2 years later, the invasion of Iraq. And we also saw the release of Spike Lee's film, Do the Right Thing, which catapulted the song everywhere. So at the time when it seemed that black power politics had been successfully contained, Public Enemy recalled through its music the history of groups like the Nation of Islam, as well as the armed resistance and survival strategies of groups like the Black Panther Party, 2 organizations that would circulate across the Arab world, by the way. So while black radical social movements in the US were mostly shut down by Reaganism, the political imaginary of those social movements endured in Chuck D's music. But Chuck's visit today is also part of a longer history of what we might think of as the worlding of black radical politics. And Lebanon and the AUB have played important roles in the history of black internationalism, and I think we're continuing that legacy today. In the late 19th century, the father of the Pan-African movement, Edward Wilmot Blyden, imagined the possibilities for Pan-Africanism and African emigration out of the West from the peaks of Mount Lebanon, while guest as the president of the Syrian Protestant College. Almost 70 years later, Malcolm X traveled to Lebanon twice, in 1964, to engage with the ascendant politics of Pan-Arabism and Pan-Islamism. He delivered his talk in Dodge Hall on this campus. In 1980, Huey Newton and the Black Panther Party visited Lebanon to meet with Yasser Arafat and other members of the PFLP. And in 1982 and again in 1996, the poet June Jordan traveled across Lebanon, and in both visits encountered the atrocities of Israeli violence here, first by witnessing Sabra and Shatila, and then Operation Grapes of Wrath, which devastated the village of Kana. And that brings us to today, May 15th, 2014, which is both Nakba Day and Chuck D's first visit to the AUB. Chuck will talk for a while about hip-hop and global culture, but I also know he wants to engage with all of us in this audience, and so there'll be plenty of time for question and answers following. Please help me welcome Chuck D to the AUB.
Peace to everybody. Peace. It is really a pleasure being here. I like to tell everybody I'm really also a husband in tow with my 3-year-old child that runs my universe. My wife, she's asleep. My wife spoke yesterday. She's a professor of Black and Latino Studies at the University of California at Santa Barbara. That's where I happened to meet her. Oh, here we go. I can be heard in any room anyway without a mic. This might be a little redundant. But my wife spoke yesterday longtime friend of Alex right here, Dr. Lubin. And excuse me? Oh, I just happened to pick that up, that's all. And speaking yesterday, she's really 3/4 of my brain, especially after jet lag. But coming to Beirut and coming to Lebanon has been a long time coming. I'd like to thank Alex for giving a lot of information and heads up with what I already know. Great friends around the world who have roots from Lebanon and also Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Egypt, and even, you know, like a lot of people I know from Israel. It's just a tripped out thing, as I always looked upon this region, especially on this day, going back to 1948, which is confusing to most of the people that really were conscious and aware around the world, wondering why the planet could not be evenly and equally shared. The moving of people from their base and from their home is just so jarring. As a young person, and I mean a person growing up in 1960 to 1970, the first 10 years of my life, there was just things I could not understand. And then as I grew to be an adult, furthermore, I just totally could not understand. And there's a lot of people that still don't understand. The one thing we can understand is that this world isn't being shared properly. And being a songwriter and an artist, I come from a time where artists had to be able to speak up for the people and for the injustices and the imbalance of the people. Harry Belafonte is a person who I work with to this very day. I happened to meet not too long ago. I work with, he set the precedent. He comes out of the framework of the great Paul Robeson in the United States, somebody who grew up black in the United States, was an athlete, just like LeBron James is talking about today, and an artist of note, a singer. He set the precedent for people like Harry Belafonte, who I had the pleasure to connect with Spike Lee on our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. But the thing about it, when we come talk about people like Harry Belafonte, and where I grew up in the 60s with Curtis Mayfield, James Brown even said, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," is that these artists follow the movement of human beings and people. The music did not lead the people. The people led the music to be accountable and responsible for people. So that's where it comes from. I didn't even make Fight the Power being the first Fight the Power. Fight the Power came from the song from the Isley Brothers in 1975, which came off the heels of where music had to speak for the masses and the people in the 1960s. This spilled over into black music, the voice of the voiceless, where the voices had to speak that were magnified for the people that didn't have a voice. And black people in the United States in the 1950s and the 40s were stripped of a voice and didn't have a voice. So therefore, it started to evolve and come out in the music. It wasn't just a black thing only, because the beat poets in the late 50s in New York City spoke out, and the folk singers spoke out, people like Pete Seeger and the Weavers, people who were blacklisted in the United States of America. And therefore, their influences spilled out to people like Harry Belafonte and all the movement of the 60s, when artists said, damn a damn law, if the law is unjust, the songs are going to be stronger than a monk, for real. So when Isley Brothers made Fight the Power in 1975, I was shocked because it was the first record I heard that had a curse word in it. And not to say that swear words are just something that should just be like all over the place for no reason at all, which sometimes has taken the wrong track in music and in hip hop. Maybe commercialized by the powers that be anyway, to grab hip hop and say, yeah, I'm your big brother. And therefore now the corporations that I call corp plantations
because they have their slave employees that operate like robots, will follow to redefine hip hop from its original root. And not to say in my discussions with artists in the cafe and just walking the streets over to the university, had just gone into discussions like right now, MCs and artists from the Arab regions of Beirut, to Syria, Saudi, got big highs here. Egypt, I was in a conversation with Arabian Nights, my man Rush, who I happened to talk to for the first time on Twitter, although I'm not a Twittiot. People I played on Rap Station, which is my inter-network, and we call the world's loudest rap radio in the network, not because it plays loud, literally, but what it says pumps up the volume, brings the noise. So we played artists like Omar Findom, Narcissist, from, who also resides in Montreal. He's back in Syria?
No, he's Syrian.
He is Syrian, yes, yeah. Shadia from UK. A lot of the artists that are outside of the region, who I think are just as important to bring the noise in all those areas that they be. They have a choice to be silent and fit in with the rest of what the definition of hip hop is, which a lot of people are rejecting around the world because, no, it's not American. So let's get the ground rules out. We can't call it American because that's derogatory to the rest of the hemisphere. Especially when you have a Central America. Especially when you have a South America. Especially when you have a North America, which Canada says, I'm not going to be your little brother no more. When you just say, come here and give me a noogie in my head. In my blood flow as a country, I got oil and water, something that does mix and something that you want, United States. Something that backs their Canadian dollar. United States dollar is not backed by anything other than an ass whooping. And that's been the plan and the rule. One of the reasons why I might get a little cryptic at times, but let a songwriter get cryptic, right? Culture is the universal language between human beings that brings us together with our humanness and knocks aside the differences. It penetrates borders and orders and waters. When you fly up in the air, whether you're in a bird or a plane, and it has to be a big-ass bird, you look down on the planet Earth, you don't see numbers, you don't see letters. We don't see letters that say AFRICA. We look at the Earth. And when somebody says, Chuck, what's your nationality? I've grown to a point being, at my age of 54, I understand that I'm an Eartherson. Been around the damn planet enough. So I'm an Eartherson. I do think it's derogatory to have a passport to visit the Earth like I'm an alien from another planet. I gotta get permission to do it. Yeah, I gotta have the damn passport. Yeah, I get it stamped. But I just think that's something that's it's so ridiculous. But then sometimes you gotta look at governments. And I say most governments, if not all. I'm an Eartherson. Governments divide, split people, chop them up into categories, keep them separated, come up with these things called laws. Let me be the songwriter and the song spitter. Therefore, you don't need the law as much because the song always says the law. Sometimes, if the law is wrong and one-sided and unjust, a song will untwist that law and challenge that law. Even when the media gets soft, even when religions get soft, and everything bows to the finances of a court plantation that masquerades as a country. the people and human beings still are of this planet and the ones that should have the planet, but it should be for all. So give me culture and let government understand that culture should rule everything around us. Beware though when government controls culture though. Beware. Beware when sometimes people say like, okay, yeah, the Americans know, like I said, it's derogatory to the whole hemisphere. If you follow me on Twitter, I call it USAers. Because in the United States of America, people are poor on two different aspects. They're poor on history and they're poor on geography. Most people in the United States that have seen the Atlantic will never see the Pacific. It's 2,000 by 3,000 square miles of 48 states. And the two other states, how the hell they become part of the United States of America beats the hell out of me. Therefore, if you go to a situation that doesn't know where the hell St. Louis is if they're from Los Angeles, much less know where North Carolina is south of Pennsylvania or Vermont, wherever the hell that is north of Alabama, then you shouldn't be surprised when the average USAer says, where the hell is Beirut? They can't point out the eastern side of the United States from Maryland to Virginia to North Carolina to South Carolina to Georgia to Florida, much less try to identify the countries that are in this region or anywhere else. You ask most USAers, do you want to leave the country? Well, only 30%, I don't know, I think it's 25%. And this is a hike in passports because they were threatening to take them away. So there's a hike in passports by the United States citizens. I think when I first started talking about it, it was like 1995 and only 19% of USAers had passports. Therefore, how can you claim to be an international country on top of the pile if you ain't been no place? Now I think it's about 25%, I could be wrong. But how could a place dictate over the rest of the planet when 75% of its people haven't left it? And say that it claims its place as an international country. So being a person through the music that has taken me through all these countries, 95 countries, I am an earthicist, I'm a culturalist, I'm a raptivist, and my job is to spread the words. And right now we're at a point, just talking to the community, the cultural community earlier, is that spreading the words is probably the biggest problem with governments, especially in the technological age of the millennium. Spread the words. Words can start or they can stop wars. Oh, it's a problem when you start talking about these hip-hop artists now, because these hip-hop artists are deft with language. They're very quick with the word. They got a point of view that happens to stick and connects in the word because it's actually dealt with from here rather than just from here. Oh, they got videos. They got style and flair too. And Lord don't have a political situation. Good friends from Palestine, Dam said it very clearly. It's not just hip hop. 30% of it is hip hop. The other 30% is literature. The other 40% is what you're surrounded by. What's your surroundings, your political situation? What's the heat next to what you live? What's your necessities? How can everybody eat, not just one person? What's the collective? One of the first things they've done in the United States to this thing that they call hip-hop was destroy groups. Make an individual big and famous. Give them $1 billion and then what? You know, a collective, you know, in bands at least, in other genres, rock and roll, the bass plays with the guitar, plays with the drummer. You know damn well if the bass and the drummer and the guitar are not together, you say, what the hell am I watching? Well, in hip hop, and I'll discuss the meaning and the definition of hip hop, you have the elements that are all in conference with each other. You have the element of DJing, which is musicianship. You have the element of MCing, which is vocalization on the microphone, 1, 2. You have graffiti, which is art, graphic expression, which you could go back to hieroglyphics. And then you have what? You have breaking, which is dance culture. So the fact that hip hop has this definition coming from corporations in the United States that this is what it is, and it started in 1973, is derogatory to the actual roots of the creativity of people that didn't have the expression in the first place. You gotta say that the architect of the particular realm of hip hop or black music in the United States came up out of being shut off from expressing yourself. The slave trade created a situation where slaves were exported and taken across the Middle Passage, and with very little apology, if any. And for hundreds of years, we're told, nigga, don't say nothing. Yet still, y'all could go with your own dialect and you could play your fiddle for entertainment. But out of this musicianship came the expression of relating to one another even if you didn't know the language. Even if somebody was playing a fiddle and happened to be mad, they would play with a little bit of with a smile on their face. They beat a drum, it would be boom, boom, with a little bit of thump on the one or whatever. The master or the landowner couldn't tell if they were mad. Didn't care if they talked one another. Didn't care if they made music one another. But they better not say shit. Better not. That's your life if you say anything. Out of this importance of why the music meant so much to black culture in the United States of America, is this expression, travel, migration meant so much to the black American, is that when you're going from a place to a place that's so vast, just like that Mediterranean, you go to the country, you see, I mean, you look out, it's beautiful. Flat as hell, going all the way to the ocean. Well, imagine somebody getting off a boat and barely surviving, because some and most died, and getting off into a place that was so vast. You congregated, you were sold, but then you didn't speak the same language, split up, and spread across the land where you couldn't even get collective with anybody because you're all different. Well, one of the meeting places in music was a place in New Orleans, which most of the world even discovered, the modern world discovered after Katrina. And most people in the United States were so surprised that when they saw the disaster in Katrina, they was surprised for the first time saying, wow, I didn't know so many black people live in New Orleans. Which means you're ignorant to the history, you're ignorant to geography. Because it's in the Gulf, the other Gulf, Gulf of Mexico. And around that particular Gulf, boats go on that side, was able to swing around the peninsula of Florida into the Gulf, into New Orleans, which was created as a city on top of sand. And at that mouth of New Orleans is this river that divides that particular area of continent in half, called the Mississippi. And in the mouth of New Orleans, it was used as a port, not just for goods, but also for human beings. And of course, human beings at that time, after the War of 1812, okay, where, Napoleon sells, like the nerve of one dude, right? One, short French dude selling that much land. So the Louisiana Purchase. But at that point in New Orleans, not only does it sell and ship tobacco and goods and stuff up the Mississippi, which goes up in a different territory, but also human beings, slaves. New Orleans was that melting pot, a place called Congo Square, where black artists got together, black people got together with their artistry and communicated and built what is called the beginnings of American music, or jazz, what it later on became called, or whatever, lack of a better word, or the blues. All of it spawned out of this area. Well, with shipment of goods goes a shipment of people, so the first next city of jazz happens to be the next city up the Mississippi, which is Memphis, Tennessee. The next city from Memphis, Tennessee happens to be St. Louis. The next city from St. Louis, when you go up and then over to the east, happens to be the city of Chicago, which is the beginning of the Great Lakes or the end of the Great Lakes, any way you want to look at it. And all those places became cities and homes of the blues. See, if the blues started in St. Louis with jazz, in New Orleans with jazz, and move up to Memphis, which became a home of the blues, and then St. Louis becomes a home of the blues, and then Chicago becomes the home of the electric blues, then you're talking a migration of people. And if you study the migration in the history, you start to have all these things factor in. By no surprise. So out of this energy of expression, when you couldn't say anything, you couldn't say, "Master, stop whipping my back. I ain't taking this slavery shit no more." All this stuff, it came out through the notes. Not a lot of singing, but when it did come out as singing, it might have came out as a church hymn or spiritual. Might have came in on the dark side of the night. It's deep down blues, maybe in the early 1900s. Something that wasn't threatening. Well, out of this expression, it meant so much to black people all the way to the rest of the last century, 1900s. Not to bore you with that historical or geographical study right there, but bring us up to the beginnings of hip hop. The music meant so much, it had to reflect the accountability and responsibility of the people. It had to reflect that, because the music meant so much. That's why black music meant so much to black folks. We ain't got nothing else, but we got what we feel in here. That changed. And it changed in 1989. What happened in hip hop was also the let's say the appropriation of major record companies realizing that it was album-oriented music instead of really starting in the streets by singles. Everything when I first started out as small 45s or 12-inch records. So it wasn't easy to make a record then. As far as hip hop was concerned, it was a bastardized music. And one thing about hip hop and rap music is terms are really definitely tied to where it comes from. And in my discussion earlier about the future of rap music and hip hop comes with those that understand where it comes from and also to be aware of its redefinitions. Like I said, my radio stations have supported, especially the Planet Earth, Planet Rap, which started as a segment of my radio show in New York City. It started out Planet Earth, Planet Rap. It was a segment that plays the hip hop world. It's the only show in the hip hop world that plays the hip hop world. So taking rap artists and hip hop artists from Montreal, taking them from Helsinki, taking them from Cape Town, taking them from Tokyo, taking them from Egypt is something that we do. Started out as a segment, moved to a 1-hour show 6 months ago. Now it's going to be its own station. Because the world is bigger than the country. And the hip hop and the rap music situation is just natural. Definitions. Definition for rap music and hip hop. When you hear people talk about, well, how many of y'all like hear radio in the United States? You get everything on your phone and internet now. And you hear, when it comes down to black music, it's a, listen to so-and-so, it's the home of hip hop and R&B. And nobody seems to know what either is. What's R&B mean? Real black guy. What's hip hop? You know, hip hop is like people go into all these body gestures. The other day, my wife and I, my child in Istanbul, oh, 50 Cent. Everybody's 50 Cent. If you don't leave this building or this room with me with anything, remember this. Remember these definitions. It's the first time you probably hear these definitions. Hip-hop. Hip-hop is the definition of the culture and the spirit within. And it also, it's the style, it's the elements that we talked about before. It's really what spawns out of the underclass as that voice of expression. Cultural expression, hip-hop, okay? Now there's been some talk that because of what's come out of the United States is so derogatory to the element and the root of what hip-hop really comes from, that there's a resistance, say, by MCs and hip-hop artists from this region said, we don't even want to call that shit hip-hop, because we not, man, no. And that's understandable. Hip-hop is just a word, especially if you spit in 3 or 4 languages. Why do you gotta call it something rooted in English, which is a clumsy language in the first place? And not even, clumsy English at that. I mean, hip-hop and rap artists from the United States was able to take the one language that USA has got and flip it. And then, of course, everything's brainwashed in the United States, because if you happen to speak with an accent coming into the United States, they make it seem like you gotta apologize when y'all know 4 languages and they know 1/2. I always get it, excuse me, my English is bad. I'm like, yo, man, my English is bad too. But see, the brainwashing that goes on in the States, even I live in California, so the same nonsense that they pull on the rest of the world, they definitely pull on Latino Americans. And they're working at jobs and, the lower jobs in areas that they once lived and thrived. And I don't want to use the word rule, because people that are about the righteousness of human beings ain't about ruling the planet. How you gonna rule something 1 billion years old? It ain't about ruling your space. It's about living in your space. It ain't about surviving in your space. It's about living in your space. But people were wiped out of that territory and had the nerve to rename it and then say, well, y'all forget your indigenous language. Learn this language. Because Columbus, he screwed up looking for India and got the nerve to call indigenous people Indians. Or F it, that's what I'll call them. Because I screwed up, the Indians. And then so you have people who speak Spanish in the West, the United States, or in the Texas area apologizing because they don't know language. And you have people in society calling them all, man. No, I said no. You don't understand anything? You understand English? No. So, with all that going on, the redefinition and reterming a lot of different things is one of those it's just one of those arrogant things that the United States pull. All right, let's cut to the chase. Hip hop, that creativity, of the term of creativity for the undervoice. Coming out of, you're shut off from expressing yourself. It's that cultural expression. Rap music is something that's really clear and definite. It's rap on top of music. So when you hear things that people talk about, I'm hip hop, I'm not rap music, I'm like, what are you doing? Are you singing or are you rapping on top of music? Well, I'm rapping, I guess. Spit. Right, you're rapping on top of music. So that's where rap music comes from. Rap music is not a music. It's a vocal on top of music. Now, the music's already defined. Let's talk about the vocal. Either you're talking, which is on one hand of the spectrum, or you're singing, which is on the other hand. Talking, singing. You got humming. You got mumbling and all that. Then you get into spoken word with a rhythm. Rapping is at the end of the spectrum. So when people say, I wish this rap music would stop, it's like saying, I wonder when these singing records are going to go away. And the thing about it, when you're rapping now, which comes with a different twist and rhythm and word speak and word play, when other languages are more flowing, like Arabic is really always flowing. It got tones, and I'll be like, whoa, you know? And the center of the hip-hop world is in Arabic nations, if you believe it, if you want to believe it. I'm just saying just as a craft of speaking and spitting, because, like I said, damn said, 30% hip-hop, 30% literature, 40% fill in the blanks. But only if you believe it. Now, like I said, rap music is vocal application of rapping on top of music. The music's already defined, or they're not defined. Musicianship is what? A delivery of music. If you don't deliver the music, then you have an a cappella. If you don't deliver the vocals, then you have what? The instrumental. And the process of rap on top of music comes from that process started in Jamaica, where the Jamaican DJs would get on top of an instrumental plate called a dub plate and do their vocal patois over the dub plate. That's why people that love reggae say, I want dub. Overdubbing a vocal on top of the music, which starts on records. That process, Kool Herc was able to take from Jamaica through the planet of Brooklyn into the Bronx. Really clear and simple. There wasn't too many Jamaicans in the Bronx. Jamaicans were based in Brooklyn. It was no big deal for a big sound system and 2 turntables and reggae music to play in Brooklyn. Bigger deal in the Bronx. Why? Studying the migration of people from New York. Let's talk about black folk from New York. Let's talk about people of color into New York. Cities always change in the United States, a big space. Once you study migration and history of people, black folks had to get away from this character called Jim Crow. Jim Crow not only would take your land and kill you, bury you, and not think twice about it. You know, it was the American South. Black people moved north, got the hell up out of the South. In the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, especially industrialization came in and plants started to open up. And you know what? When you talk about the movement from the South to the North, if there's a problem, black folks are going north, because not going this way or that way. Maybe when you got out to, you know, if you're Mississippi and Texas, people started to migrate west a little bit. Or really, it was break north. That's why if you study geography in the United States, if there was Jim Crow in North Carolina and South Carolina, you traveled up the coastline, the seaboard, to Philadelphia, New York, where they had jobs, industrialization, factories, so on and so on. There was in Alabama and Georgia. They went straight up through Tennessee into places like Cincinnati, also Cleveland, into Detroit where they had the car plants. If you had Mississippi, they traveled straight up alongside the river into places like what? Over in St. Louis, up Chicago, Minneapolis, Omaha. The movement was north and get the hell up out of here. Jim Crow worked all the way to post-World War II in abundance. But it was different in Brooklyn. Once they started opening up the immigration ports, even more movement came from the Caribbean straight to the port of New York, the melting pot. That's why you have a lot of people from Puerto Rico go up straight into New York, and they moved into a suburb called the Bronx. Jamaicans and a lot of people moved into the suburb called Brooklyn. These places were suburbs. They wasn't so much big city, 5 boroughs, what? Really 4 boroughs, because Staten Island could have been another planet. Like, even in hip hop, they talk about, yo, Shaolin, that was Wu-Tang 40 years later. That was Richmond County, A bunch of people that moved there from Brooklyn and said nobody else better come on this. We took it. So even when you study the geography of New York, you got to study, well, what comes out of it? How does hip hop evolve out of that space? The center point for black life since the 20s in the migration was moved straight to New York to Harlem. Harlem was cleared out. You know, matter of fact, it was a Jewish haven in Harlem. They owned magnificent buildings, and they moved there before they migrated further out. And so black people moved into the buildings and then into that space. So the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, black folks moved there. I remember having conversations with my own great-grandmother, like, what made you move to Harlem from North Carolina in 1936? And she gave me reasons why her sister moved there. There's about 10 or 12 brothers and sisters. They moved there, no opportunity in the South. They jetted up north and got the hell up out of the South. That generation, you couldn't get that generation, even when New York City was on a decline of being serviced. Because what happened is the black communities in New York City stopped being serviced around the 40s, really late 40s, 50s especially, 60s and 70s, where, you know, it became sort of like a slum. Matter of fact, underserviced areas in New York City were considered slums post-1950. It's just like, you know what, we're not going to pick up the garbage when we want. Oh, yeah, there's going to be some homelessness there. Well, you know, if you got a problem with, matter of fact, we're going to try. We ain't going to move you out, but we're going to make conditions so bad that you won't get out. And then when you get out, then we'll figure out how to fix this up. And so then Brooklyn turned into what it is in 2014. So it wasn't always the best place. But the base for black life was Harlem. The Bronx was considered a suburb until it started opening up in the 50s of people moving out of the Bronx. And then black folks knowing they could move in the Bronx, and also the mass movement of Puerto Ricans and other Caribbeans up in the Bronx, but not so much the ones in Brooklyn. Make a long story short, Kool Herc goes to the Bronx as a Jamaican surrounded by Puerto Ricans and I guess black Americans with the same technique of toasting, but then his records had to be not, you know, take the Jamaican records off. Put James Brown on there. Put George Clinton on there. Put some funky records on there, and instead of saying in Jamaican patois, whoever's going to grab the mic is going to be really straight out, Americanized New York. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Same technique, different voice, different music. Rap music, same thing that the Jamaicans was doing with toasting and dub plates. Fast forward into the discussion I was having just with Arab MCs in the region. Multilingual. Then at the same time, you got situations in your face that are right here. Something to talk about. The collectivity of the music and the language and the politics of the people, all synonymous, all rolled up into a discussion where the words are now spread. And when the words are spread, there's something that governments sometimes say, well, we don't mind that being said, but why has it got to be said by all of them? And he's from Syria, and she's from Saudi, and they're from Palestine, and they're from Egypt. They're all different. But in the hip hop nation, they say, nah, we kind of like the same. And although there is the respect of religion, there's also the doubt of how religion has been tampered by governments. They say, yeah, we praise, you know, we give all praise to the will of God, Allah. But I don't know if a government got anything to do with it. And all I know when I spit my hip hop, it comes from deep inside. And I got my brother and my sister that could connect with that. And all I know is that something's going on, there's some government shit going on. So we, as a new generation or a couple of new generations, happen to say something that happens to feel right that can't be controlled by orders or borders or territories. All of a sudden, the connection of human beings start to come together. And it's cool to be in the human when you start to realize who you are, that you have the similarities instead of the differences. This is where the Hip Hop Nation seems to be making its mark on what it feels, speaking for the people. Right here, the center of the hip hop planet, because yeah, you get the flows, you got 3 or 4 languages in your pocket. Yeah, you got the beats. Everybody got the beats. This music been distributed for the last 80 years. Everybody got the same beats. Everybody got the same equipment. Everybody got the same, you know, yeah, let's go to the club, get it poppin', baby. Everybody can get the same lingo, the same style. Everybody can spit. Now, what's the thing? What's the next thing? How do we come together and do music? Human beings want the same thing. And sometimes when it gets down to the politics of government and religion, they make it confusing for the people who are to inherit the earth next, the future generations. Maybe if corporations could come along and just dictate what hip hop should be, that would be cool. Yeah, hip hop. We the home of hip hop, yo. Let's get stupid. Let's rob the club. Everything coming down. When I leave the United States of America, trust me. I got, you know, it makes me, you know, I gotta go to IQ rehab. Being a raptivist, my job is to spread the words. And, you know, and can hip-hop progress the world past 140 characters? Has it crippled intellectual quest in the United States? Has it favored anti-intellectualism? Why should we detach intellectualism away from spreading the words in hip-hop and rap music? Does it figure in dumbassification? Beware of something that controls the climate, because when it controls the climate, it could dictate movements. You don't want something to control the climate to dictate the movement that people should actually form. People, human beings should form the movement. Beware of a situation that considers the masses them asses. They just move the M over. Beware of situations where, you know, like in the music of jazz, they try to say that the best jazz players were the ones that happen to be doped up the most. So therefore, in the 40s, you had people that say, I want to try to get like Charlie Parker, so they would happen to see if they could smack up their arms. It just, where did that come from? That came from the infiltration of drugs in the communities to get them divided and conquered, been going on for a long time. In the United States, they split up indigenous people by throwing them smallpox diseases in blankets. Oh, we come to you with a smile, we're gonna split you up. So a lot of the artists and the words and the hip hop that's been coming out of this region has been very powerful to answer and speak to the world. My advice also to hip hop artists here is that don't start getting into being judged by anything coming from the West and Western rules of anything, because you can't apply them. You can't ask people from the United States of America, you can't impress them. You can't impress them unless you impress from your vantage point and not looking to impress them. So a hip hop artist trying to like, yo man, we're trying to do the United States thing, the American thing, to see if they can be impressed. They're not equipped to understand. They can't identify, the average cannot identify east, north, south, or west. Stop trying to do that. Be yourself. Build from yourself. Collectives are very important. One thing that they succeed to do in hip hop is break it down to an individual type of thing. Individuals cannot make a movement. They've scattered the individual in hip hop to where this person's make this money and that person makes that money, so they make money, then what? What does this mean? What can be inspiring when you actually come to Beirut, when you actually go to Damascus? What can it, this hip hop has been here 25, 30 years anyway. So what can the artists do when they come in? You must be of some service, you must be of some inspiration, and you must be able to acknowledge the history and the climate of the region that you're visiting and going into. That is the job of the artist, especially in hip hop in this day. In my opinion. I could be wrong. I've been doing this like 25 years just speaking. I go to colleges, I give props to collegians. Why? Because in the United States, they don't prop collegians. You look at the news coming out of the music and the culture, it's just like, well, did Beyonce's sister kick Jay-Z? Well, you know what? If this is on TMZ, you're like, but the problem is TMZ has surpassed CNN. And then you see CNN try to catch up to TMZ. What is this? It's like TMZ is a legitimate news source now. How can you, being involved with music and culture, even take that seriously? The rest of the world is like looking, they say, beware. You know when somebody's laughing with you, and also be aware when somebody's laughing at you. The United States of America is being laughed at by the rest of the world. And the only thing that can shut that laughter up is an ass whooping. I'll give you a case in point. When you look, to take culture, popular culture, and use it to young and dumb people down, it's where do you go with that? You young people down, like for example, you heard, this in a rap song, the 40's the new 30. 30, how stupid is that? What is it, 30 the new 20? What is it, 20 the new 10? Is it 10 the new zygote, the new embryo? It's like, logic, rationale, deductive reasoning. How young is young? Oh, they just young, so they don't know. How young is young? MTV and BET, the Booty and Thug Network, they succeeded in extending teenage years to 35. Really, seriously. They've used hip-hop as the face to dumbassification. Oh,
Fight the power.
Well, I'm just saying, your mind should be the bragging point. And at this stage of time, I got about 10 more minutes. Sure. I want to be a Grim Reaper. Sight and sound are the keys to propaganda if you study environments and takeover systems. You see in Nazi Germany, it was all about sight and sound. Take it over, control people with this propaganda movement. Sight, sound, sight, sound. It was only a matter of time before they said, well, we could take something like music and really pour super propaganda in it. I grew up in a time where music was a byproduct of an audiovisual age. In 1980, which was R&B, which was Reagan and Bush. I know, it's like 1980 was my first year I was able to vote. I voted for Angela Davis. Not for me. We knew the inevitable. 80s was a rough period. The black guy coming out of New York, looking at 8 years of Reagan, 12 years of Reagan and Bush. Ronald Wilson Reagan, the 666 man himself. And George Bush the father, which most USAers kind of like don't know that there was another George Bush. I said, yeah, one of them. The son of a Bush came out there. It's a crazy period. So I remember very clearly, in the New York area alone, a gun was a hard thing to find in 1973, 74. Somebody was I'm coming from a 98% black neighborhood on Long Island. This person got shot in 1975 in our neighborhood, 1 square mile town, 24,000 people. And the biggest question everybody asked in 1975 was like, oh, so-and-so shot somebody. Wow, how do you get a gun? That was the biggest question. You know, there was guns and you know, like, oh, my uncle, grandpa got a gun, he was in World War II. He threatened anybody that came by the house to talk to his daughter, like, you better get away from my house. So it was those type of guns, sword or shotgun, come by my house, you know, Lugers, you know, stuff together, you know. But by 1978, I remember this clear as day, and I wasn't a kid. I was 18 years old, 19 years old. You know, once you're 18 years old in the United States, they could send you off to war with no kind of reason, and you know you ain't no kid. I remember that there was a summer of violence because all of a sudden there was this influx of guns that came out of nowhere. What it also came in with this influx of drugs. Cocaine was also findable in the black neighborhood. Before that, it was like weed, and then cocaine came in. And a lot of those people that were on weed, they took the weed off the streets, and then they had dealers going around said, well, I have the weed. There was an appetite for people that smoked. And they said, well, you don't have that, but this is what we have. And a lot of people, like, there was resistance. Like, no, I don't. That's like Superfly. I don't touch that stuff. What happened, the dealers started giving it to people. And then they would still come back for weed and says, well, I got the weed. I know I don't have the weed. And people are like, well, you still ain't got the weed? Well, give me that stuff that you gave me last time. No, you got to pay for it this time. Have a good party night, so to speak. Therefore, cocaine all of a sudden became the drug of choice. 78, 79. With that drug influx of dealers came just a plethora of guns. Territorial gangs all of a sudden just became what? Kind of drug gangs. Because with drugs and also with guns came money. 2 years later, freebasing morphed into this thing called crack, which turned the drug thing into something else, and also influx of what do they call the AKs? What do they call those weapons? Salt. Right. By 1983, 84, you could find crack, guns, and drugs, and cocaine. I mean, crack, guns, and large amounts of money in New York in 82 and 83, and couldn't find it in Detroit. Could not find it in Chicago at that level. By 1987 and 88, when I first started as Public Enemy, as touring the United States of America, all of a sudden, Wichita, Kansas, Galveston, Texas, Birmingham, Alabama, Denver, Colorado, had a crack, drugs, guns thing going on. That's like, wow, the migration of how this thing just spread, wow. Wasn't there in 82, but there in 87. Came through two areas, New York, Southern California, where the CIA was supposedly in on bringing, starting up people like, not Ricky Rose, but Ricky Ross. It's just ironic that, you know, that the Rick Ross, I think Rick Ross sued Rick Ross for using his name. You think that the Freeway Rick Ross would sue Rick Ross for using his name as a rapper? No, the rapper sued. So, getting into the mystery of what this thing is all about, where sometimes the governments get behind culture, especially in the Western world. And I think that the artists of the world, especially in the resistance, always necessary. You know, it's really, you have to have artists who are connected into the community. But the community must support the artists. That's the thing that can hold back the corporations. Not so much people falling victim because they happen to see something shiny on TV and new generations are like, wow. You're always going to have that. But I think if you have artists that really speak to the issues at hand, you must have a community to support them. Because if the community doesn't support the arts, how can you expect the arts to support or protect the community? And when it comes down to artists making their records and their songs and their movement here, collect yourself as a unit. That's what makes the movement. The movement now with technology is taking on new realms, which are, yeah, they're quite threatening because the words are spreading ever so fast and quick and powerful. Not to get into what religion is or ain't, but I tell you this, that hip hop at its best to unite the planet and human beings is this far away from being a prayer. The spreading of words and the spitting of righteousness is this far away from being a religion itself. Because it connects human beings, it makes them see things, makes them see beyond the law, makes them look into nature and says, this is true, this is us. We talk about the spreading of words, and the spreading of words go deep within of what's believed and spit, as long as it's on behalf of all. The balance in hip-hop is necessary, and rap music is necessary. And the artists who are willing to say, you know, I'm doing this just like my lungs pump. It's an involuntary move where your lungs breathe. You're spitting because your lungs already, you gotta spit what you think, you gotta spit what you believe. And if you come from a community and know that you're gonna be in your community, then you're going to spit what that community needs no matter what, because you got to live there. These are common basics. I don't know where Kanye West lives. And the United States is so vast that you can be everywhere but seen nowhere. Oh, I see you everywhere but nowhere at the same time. I don't even know if you exist. There's people I know in hip-hop, I've never seen them at all, ever. It's like, where the hell they live? One time I was walking the streets, I walk the streets, you know, whatever, boom. I saw Jay-Z coming on, like, whoa. Like, there's no way you walk around like me. I have nothing to worry about. People are my security. So we shook hands, and I looked, there was a person over there, a person over there, you got a person on top of a building. It's a lot of pressure, boy. That's what they could get away with in the United States. You could be seen everywhere but no place at the same time. Other situations, smaller concentrated situations, you can't be, I don't know if you could be from Beirut and talk against the people who still live in Beirut. This big too? You don't go. You're going to see somebody. You can't be in that, what's that area we went yesterday?
Downtown?
Downtown. Oh, kind of kidded out. I was just like, you know. But how long you gonna be there without seeing somebody? So you can't talk about, you gotta only talk how you gonna build and how you gonna inspire. Any artist in here, how many artists are in here? Artist's number one goal is like, how can you actually collect and also inspire even those, well, my service is, at my age and stage, right? Number one, at the age I am, if I can't teach, I shouldn't even open my mouth to speak, all right? Number two, if I can't be of service to the community I come from, and that means the hip hop generation all around the world, I can't be of service to inspire and build platforms, then I'm wasting my time. I can't go to countries and do a wave by. It's like, oh yeah, we're in a limo, hey, how y'all doing, people? Nah, you gotta inspire the community, because when you return, you say, I hope to inspire so you could be greater than myself. That's the job of an artist. Like, you know what? You gotta be great. Most of this conversation, I said this, I'm not coming to do a lecture, I'm coming to have a conversation. And Alex knows I've done more listening than talking. So I'll be stupid to sit up here and be like, no. My job around the world is to be able to build this art form and culture of hip hop to be greater than any other musical form, because A, it's use of words. Words have started and ended wars. Governments have been sloppy with words. They know they gotta be careful with words. But artists have to be we must seriously take ownership of those words and be very serious about meaning what we say and spitting what we believe. That's the thing. Artists have the opportunity and the ability to seriously change the world and fight the power. The power ain't right, you gotta fight it. And you don't need to fight it, it ain't gotta be this. It ain't gotta be, like the thing is like, the primitive way, they build weapons, rocket launchers, tanks, and all these things that cost billions of dollars when they can just feed the world. So all these governments just, and it's basically testosterone, like my wife says. You don't see women building rocket launchers like, oh, we just got this bomb. And the problem with men, no matter what, is like, men have cycles, and they're called wars. The mistreatment of women in this day and age in 2014 is unacceptable to human beings. And if this world is to go forward, as it spins all the time, and the people just hope to pray an asteroid don't hit it, the whole key is to be able to say, as human beings, how do we gel together? Hip-hop has that ability to be righteous, at least with the word. Doesn't mean that, all right, somebody's got, you got this silly stuff going on. And that's cool too. I mean, you're not gonna stop that. It's like the earth. A tsunami, it could hit, but also you have this beautiful day. More often you get beautiful days than tsunamis. If a tsunami happened every day, it'd be Jupiter, there's a storm going on around that red dot every second. That red dot is creating havoc around you. We ain't got that. So we understand that's the part of nature that this world, it quakes, it does this, okay, that's part of the world. We can't go, no, it's not our place. It's things that we're not going to comprehend where we're not supposed to comprehend. But as old ways build weapons and billions of dollars where they can fix the world and everybody have something, you have the haves stuck in an ideology that they gotta have every damn thing. And this is that glitch in human nature that we sometimes won't be able to understand. The weapons that they can't stop hip hop from using now is they're trying to stop the internet. They're trying to stop these gadgets called phones. They're trying to stop the turntables that, oh man, the de-emphasizing of the school education, the music in the schools in the 70s in New York. Out of those ashes like a phoenix came what? People that say, all right, I couldn't play instruments, I'm gonna play these records and we're gonna do it the Jamaican way. Wow. Did they see it coming? Hell no. I remember I was there. They did not see it coming. It was what they call the bastard music. Okay, call it what you want. Oh no, this feels good and feels better. And they keep coming to it because the words connect. Words can't be processed like McDonald's fish. Some things can't be like explained with words in a book. Some things are felt. You don't know the language, the first thing that you see somebody like, that works. Why does that work? It's not a book it's not a sentence that covers that correctly. Also, what doesn't work? Well, I mean, how do you explain that? Not everything is going to be put in some kind of scholarly form that people say, it's going to be things that are felt amongst human beings that maybe only musicians and wordsmiths will be able to get across. And superlinguists, I know I got in an argument with somebody 5 years ago. She got mad at me. I didn't care. I said, the next rappers that actually, you want to say, rule the earth, totally ain't gonna come from the United States. It's gonna be people that can spit 3 languages. I said, I already knew so many artists that were from Africa, they could spit 3 languages and braid them like hair. Like, yeah, somebody gonna be like, I'm like this, I go 1, I go 2, and then it turns into 3. I'm like, that won't work. The artist's 3 years old, and she can spit better than, like, you know, the top 10. It's like, they dumb themselves down and young themselves down into what, the 4th grade? How's that gonna work? And then you can mix it with all these other things. So that's what I'm saying, that the center point of the culture in rap music and hip hop is here. No matter if you call it, have to redefine it, come with a different term. Still gonna be the same process. What you gonna spit about? What you gonna rap about? Can't avoid talking about what's real. You know, Alex already said I can't take a truck ride to Tripoli. Stopped at the border. My man Jasiri X, you know, wrote a song. See, the thing about it is I think like rap artists and hip hop artists, it's like always think about before you spit, there's always plenty of topics that you can do without trying to always just talk about what affects you. There's things beyond. Think beyond. Write a great song about a great person that you know. Write and spit a song about a revolutionary. Or write about anybody that influenced you. Write about an event the minute after it happens. You beating out the news, especially beating out CNN. That's what just Siri X does. As soon as something happens, but we can't rely on black news. In the United States, it's a debacle. It's a waste of time. It's like they up there trying to cover, oh, so-and-so wore these stilettos. I'm like, what the hell? What the hell they got to do with some talking about somebody's money? It's like, oh man, you know, Dr. Dre, you know, he's the first billionaire. And they up there screaming on him, you're the first billionaire. It's like, wow, okay, that's great. So Apple gives you $1 billion, you jump in the rapper. Fantastic. Yeah. Wasn't due for you. So I think that those are things I think is very important. Thin line between style and stupid. I got these things before I actually go into Q&A because that's usually the best part. And I usually actually run this as a case in point, in case y'all gotta leave. It's a wonderful building, by the way, right? And I was told earlier that the woman that designed this really wanted to really point her fist to the world and take this on. All right, pay attention. It's the cheapest price to pay. All right, especially in this world today where everything is everything everywhere at light speed in technology. Don't let the technology daze you. In the United States, they're dumbified by it. And I'm not a person that just goes around and says, I'm out of the United States, so I'm going to go just keep hitting the United States with although I've been doing it all my life, but it's not this thing where I'm just like, I mean, like I said, I'm an earthicist. I'm an earthicist. I like the planet Earth. I like the terrain that the United States happen to be sitting on. I like to drive. I like how New Mexico looks. I like driving through Texas, and I love the land. But they ain't got nothing to do with the United States. The United States, they built the canyons and all that. It got nothing to do with it. I want to be able to drive from Beirut to Tripoli and not get no stress and drama. Remember that somebody's going to actually come, especially on this anniversary, who's going to tell somebody they got to leave and never come back on the planet Earth, 1 billion some odd years old. The audacity of somebody said we own a mountain. How the hell are you going to own a, no wonder why the indigenous people looked at the takeover people and said, you know, how the hell are you going to own a damn mountain? You could live here, but they ain't going to own it. And then kick me off of it? That's some greedy bulls for real. Doesn't make any sense. Enough on this planet to go around. So pay attention, it's the cheapest price to pay. And with culture and technology and the world moving faster with these gadgets, you gotta stay on top of these gadgets. You're not gonna be able to master them. You gotta manage it. Don't be a dumb MF with a smart ass phone. These things are turning into the human remotes. You think that you're controlling the world, especially Americans. Americans think, you know, oh, I ain't got to get up. I'll just use this to move my world. Or if I pay AT&T. The control comes in. So whatever situation's out there is using the phone to control your human being. They are already being inside your human. Trying to pay their trying to pay their cell phone bill, they cut it off. And people pleading because yo, I need my phone just to live. I mean, I can't take 5,000 selfies anymore. American problems. USAers. Define what you say that you love. Come with a true definition of what you know, I love this, I love that. Okay, what? I don't really know what it is, but I love it. I mean, you gotta define what you say you love, really clear. Learn about what you say that you love. What you fight for is what you love, but do you really know what you're fighting for? You know what you're standing up for. Really know about it. Thorough. Just don't just say, well, I'm that. Okay, what does that mean? I'm just that because everybody says I should be that. Okay. Design your insides. It's very important. A lot of people, you know, in the Western world, and even this, I see it seeped over here in advertisements. It's like everything is just about the outside. And we'll sell you your outside because you ain't got your inside. So we'll just sell this look that you need to have. And this is one of these things that's coming, and it's been dictated from the West to tell everybody that, you know, yeah, you got your own identity, but it's better be like this. And designing your inside is very important. Because if your insides are less than your outsides, then how much of yourself do you have? Don't young down, age up. The present is the ultimate gift. It's very important. Present, that's why I call it present. It's like a gift. You know, the further you go, how much of a service you're going to be to those around you with what you got. Even when you say it's love. A song by a group called Third World, very clear, written by Gamble Huff, one of the greatest songwriters of all time, said, now that you found love, what are you going to do with it? That's the thing about it. You're going to keep it for yourself or you're going to spread love? Like Bob Marley. Spreading love is knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and it don't come in the microwave. Spreading love is actually looking out for your fellow man and woman, the child, and communities that have not what you might have. Get a passport, I tell United States people. 25% have them. I try to tell people in the United States, learn another language, please. You need to bring them up to 1.5 languages. Be smart in your smartphone. Intelligence will save you. find like-minded people. Hard work, concentration, desire, dedication, inspiration, hopefully could lead to perspiration. Hard work won't guarantee you anything, but without it, you don't stand a chance. Success is the collision of preparation and opportunity. So don't believe all these other areas of what's successful and what's not successful. Make your own standard. If you're an artist out there and says, well, you know, I wanted people to buy my stuff, I'm like, well, first you might want people to buy into it, and then whatever you might need. You know that if you're a grown person, you got to figure out how to support your living, especially if you have a family and children who don't care, especially when they're at a real young age, probably don't really care about these little things that you might have about your art. Or they might just be like, okay, I'm hungry. You got to answer to that. You can catch me on Twitter at Mr. Chuck D, MRCHUCKD. You can email me at chuckd@publicenemy.com. It's so simple that if you can't remember that, you don't need to have it. I have rapstation.com, which we are starting the Planet Earth, Planet Rap station any day now with the new free application on rapstation.com, which will be in support of many of the artists around the world, especially in this region. We highlight, artists. Like I said, we've already gone on artists from the regions. Like I said, Arabian Nights with Rush, he's going to do a show. My man Big Haas is back here, flew from Saudi to get on down here. We've been communicating on Twitter a while. He's been trying to catch me and do this interview, and I was like, okay, I'm coming. Yeah, he found out I was coming here. Like I said, I came in tow, husband in tow, holding my 3-year-old throughout town. My wife came here and spoke and did all the heavy lifting. She's 3/4 of my brain. But also, Alex has been a great friend and asset as well. And also today at the cafe, just meeting some great artists and great people who I hope they understand that they are the, really, if you believe it, you're the center of the planet. The planet is up to be spoken to. And I'm not saying it's going to be the exclusive center of the hip-hop planet. But I'm saying that collectively, it's all about collective stance. And what had just happened in Egypt was also preceded about what happened in France 2006 and 2007, when they didn't think any kind of movement would come from cell phones. With the hip-hop community, although they wasn't spitting on the mic, they said, you know, we're mobilizing movement like this, and it was like, it made Time magazine like, what the hell is this burning car thing going on? Hip-hop community mobilized on that. And that was felt everywhere, places of movement. Egypt picked up on that. Palestinian movement of MCs and DJs is really strong. Really strong, and then also like right here, really strong. Don't expect the United States citizens to all of a sudden get smart on this. They're still looking at tourist shows and I don't know. I mean, it don't look to think that they're going to turn around anytime soon, so don't waste your time trying to impress that. The United States citizens got to get out of their own way. That's a pit. It's like quicksand. It's a big place. I'll take some Q&A. Yeah, but and please don't clap for me because that's a waste of time. One thing I can't stand, every time, they have the nerve in the States to talk about what do they call it, the presidential, comes out. And, State of the Union. State of the Union. It's like, I'm not even going to go into the pro-Obama, any time a person sits in the seat of the president of the United States, expect the worst. And if they look like they're gonna do the best, expect twice as much. No, that's just the game. It's the game that you gotta pay attention to, no matter where you are in the world. And of course, when people sit there talk Illuminati and skull and bones and all that, it's like, yeah, it's been going on. The whole key is what are you gonna do about it, and how are you gonna be able to collectively spread the words to inform people in ways that you can, that you can go forward. That's the collective movement. And but the thing about it with the State of Union, it's like you notice that half the room is hating, and out there where they all clap. And I'm like, if we could just read some minds in this room. I'm not the only one that probably knows how to read minds. Michelle Obama. I know when the look on her face would be like, this is some bullshit. And it's I don't want to say comedy, because it's a sad comedy. But we predicted the New World Order would really seep heavily after 1999. Really heavy. So prepare for the next 6 years going to the year of clarity, 2020. They've already built facilities in the United States where they're ready to hold 5 million people. They got 3 million people in prison right now. We do the math. Where do you think they're gonna find another 2? Okay, we're not fighting the world no more. We're not fighting, we stopped wars, so let's figure out how we can get productivity out of corporations that own all the prisons now, from different places. Let's build more prisons around the planet. It's just, make this a united prison of, the year 2020. Alice is looking at me saying my minutes are dripping away. I usually get kicked out of buildings.
So I have the unenviable task of getting people out of here in about 20 minutes, because I promised we would only use the room for 2 hours. So don't clap.
Yeah, don't clap. So if you have a question, raise your hand, stand up, tell me where you're from, and let me know about you too.
Maybe we can take a few questions at once.
I'll be quick on answers.
All right.
Omar, specifically from Lebanon, Egypt. Basically the whole Arab nation. I represent Black Banners, and it's an honor to finally see you. You're the reason I started rapping. I'm not gonna. Anyway, 2 questions. One, how did you deal as an artist when you were young, first coming on the come up, with people telling you to dumb it down, knowing that you didn't want to dumb it down at all, but you had to? So how did you ever go that route at all?
No.
Not at all.
I was a college graduate. I was black coming in from Long Island. This is 1980s, Reagan and Bush. I tried to beat people there with my intelligence. Number 2, I was asked to do records, so I never tried to shop the record deal. Rick Rubin tried to call me for a year to do records. I said, if I'm coming in, you got to do it under my way or no way. Rick was like, cool. I'm like, I'm good. My first thing I wanted to do, get the hell out of the United States. So I got a passport and we never looked back. Public Enemy would have been long over if we never left the United States. Our power has been presented by the world. And so we went to many places, not to go around and play, but to plant seeds, go to the hip hop community wherever we go, plant seeds, see them grow into fruit. Our whole goal was to make everybody greater than ourselves. Some people ran off with that philosophy and got greater than people and then never looked back. But it's not, you don't have to look back at us. You got to look back for where you woke up or where you grew up. Are you going to claim a place that you say, yeah, I claim the place, but you can't even walk the streets of the place. You don't have conversations with people in the place that you claim so much. You can't be seen every place and no place at the same time. So we were but to be an artist, to inspire, to start people to be artists, they didn't come from us anyway. I was inspired with, you know, people like Curtis Mayfield, Nina Simone. This was what artists supposed to do. To speak to someone that actually will carry the torch, be accountable and responsible to their generation, and to be able to pass on that legacy of accountability and responsibility to be greater than themselves. That's where that came from. Yes.
You believe in the America of today that underground hip hop will ever have a place like it used to in the 90s or the 80s?
Underground is not necessarily the best term because we have underground and underfound.
Yeah.
Underfound is veterans that have been doing it for a long time until they continue to do it. You're just underfound. You're not underground. You want to try to make underground this area that's just, okay, you're not mainstream, so you're underground. It's like, it's underfound, it's mainstream, but really underfound is really the veterans that's going to keep on doing it. Because your lungs work, you spit just like your lungs work. You're going to do it just because you're artists. And you know what? If musicians study the history of art and artists, would be better off. Because back in the day when the artists were, the primary function of artists was like maybe to paint or sculpt, because that work would stand the test of time. You know, every time let's say you come out with a record as an independent artist, veteran, underfound, you don't come out with batches and trying to sell 236,192 in the first week. You come off like an artist with a painting that spent time making the painting, that comes off with a conversation to engage whoever comes into their art. Musicians should study the history of art because that's what they're delivering, not the history of commerce. I mean, it's good to study that too, but you got to understand the history of art will lead you in an understanding of what's commerce for you. Questions? Say where you're from. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm Lebanese Syrian, Lebanese mom, Syrian dad. My name's Mazen. I teach English and history right now, and I had the privilege of working with some of my students. I introduced them to black poetry from the Harlem Renaissance, black arts movement, and I wanted to know, obviously you mentioned there's like a spectrum, where sort of spoken word and poetry and hip hop sort of exist along the same spectrum. Do you feel that there's something about hip hop and rap that makes it very unique in the way and its ability to transmit the message? And if so, what is it that sort of makes something that you've done or something that other politically, socially conscious rappers have done different than like Amiri Baraka's work or something that was more poetry inclined?
The use of the word and the uses of the music and the word, the marriage between them is inseparable. So it makes it special. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Nicole. I'm actually from the U.S. as well. I'm an aspiring history teacher, high school history teacher, so.
What part of the U.S. are you from?
Connecticut.
All right, what part?
Waterbury.
Waterbury, all right.
So, just with your last comments about the rise of the prison industrial complex, I wondered if you could speak to the privatization of education in the U.S., how that is leading to this funneling of the school-to-prison pipeline, and what's happening like with the resistance in prisons, because I haven't really heard much about music there.
Well, the thing about it, so much can be taught through culture and music, but it's not. The curriculum needs to be changed, but the same thing, the privatization of education can also lead into the acceptance of a climate that's also caused by a corporation. The fear is hip-hop becoming a one-stop shop, create the climate, the aura, the lacking of the proper information, to see through it, and then end up going right in the stage and the step into the same thing that started you off on. Does the education build up enough of a resistance in you to see through the BS? That's the question.
You in the back, all the way in the back.
Sure. I'm John Russell from North Lebanon. I met you earlier. I'm not going to waste anybody's time.
It was a pleasure indeed, especially taking those pictures.
It's a true honor. Just a quick question. This is a big throwback. I was just watching a video of Public Enemy on YouTube with you guys being on Soul Train way back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I was just watching Don Cornelius interview you guys and your performance with the S1Ws and all that. I was wondering what was going through your head at the time when you were being interviewed. How did that feel? And the generational gap in a sense. And kind of passing the torch? Or,
No, it wasn't
what
no
was it like?
generation gap. It was like, oh shit, that one Soul Train. You know? Yeah, we became, you know, I call him Don. We became very close to Don, and he's greatly missed because he carried the dignity in class. And every black artist went through his portal where they necessarily wouldn't have been seen and heard, especially not us. Our records were really never ever heard on the radio. We didn't get the United States to even know anything that we did, although there's two ways. One was touring in the stadiums and arenas, LL and Houdini and Dougie Fresh and Eric B and Rakim, but we became known once we played on Soul Train, which was December, which was actually recorded in October. We played in December 1987, and I was like, I see you on Soul Train. It's almost like how America, United States deals with reality TV. They look at reality TV, but it's already been recorded a year ago and put in the can, you know, 8 months ago, and look at, oh man, I can't wait till next week. I mean, wow, how, it's like swallowing your own vomit. And calling it a meal. Yes.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, you know, Alex, you
I saw.
because you're the one that got me Grim Reaper sword.
Yeah, I got to end it, so go ahead.
Hi, I'm Elise. I'm from San Francisco. Thanks so much for being here. I'm wondering if hip-hop is the expression of the underclass, as you said, what contribution, if any, can privileged artists, especially white artists, make to the hip-hop nation?
Oh, no, ask that question again.
If hip-hop is the expression, like you said, of the underclass, what contribution, if any, can privileged artists, especially white artists, make to the hip-hop nation?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the expression coming out of an underclass and a censored, silenced voice. That's the origin. It's spread and morphed everywhere. So artists can be what they want to be, even if they're privileged. I think, but they should also spit the truth of what they really know or where they're from. And then at the same time, they should be open to stories beyond themselves too. It's the industry of it that has imbalanced it more than the artists themselves. A lot of flack is coming from, should Macklemore have been the voice of hip hop 2014 coming out of the United States? I said, well, why not? Because he spoke on some different issues. And then, here's another thing about white MCs in the United States, especially. They don't use the crutch of the N-word, which has basically been splashed on black rappers like it's like supposed to be the cookies and milk, by anointed by who? You know, so that's one thing that we can relearn about black men rediscovering our accountability and responsibility somewhat so we don't get lazy with words. So it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you speak human about human issues is a good thing. I think it's a good thing. Macklemore did it. Spoke to a couple of his songs. Kendrick Lamar is moving in that direction. He seems a little conflicted because it's like he's got to kind of like do it to like what people's is like expecting and feeling, and he's got to take it into the next phase. But also, I would say the thing that will set him free is to be fearless. And when you're fearless and you go into that road and you go into that zone, you're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose the quantity of what you could be looking for, but you're going to raise the quality of what you become. That's something that's going to be a challenge. It doesn't have to be a challenge to Kendrick right now. Everybody will find their point where they have to kind of like look at their audience and say, you know what, I can prove I'm more about my thing than you are as a fanatic. More questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Mahmoud from Boston. And you mentioned Macklemore, Kendrick Lamar, Eric B. and Rakim. So I was just curious, who are your favorite artists and favorites to work with?
Go to rapstation.com. I give a top 50 every 2 weeks. And on our internet works, I give a top 10 every week. My favorite song I like right now is two favorite songs I have on the year. Number one is Pharoah Monch, Bad MF. And the other one is Eminem, Rap God, believe it or not. And my two favorite cats for the States that I love like little brothers Brother Ali and the Motor Technique. I would tell you, two revolutions are coming, and we're supporting on Rap Station. Two revolutions are coming in the music. Yeah, they're hitting the United States from the side, like oof, oof. Number one is the international MC that spits more than 1 or 2 languages and comes really hard with their beliefs. It's hitting the United. It's gonna really sock the United States because they can't be primitive and compete against something that's coming like with all the elements. The other one is women, and collective women especially, and women in hip hop. It's just so much of a universe there. That's, you know, this at the bottom line. It's all performance art. When you have some time and you have a couple of dollars or whatever in your pocket, and you have to go to a place, it has to be worth your time and your money to watch some performance art. If it's not, you got a problem. You're like, what did I just do? I wasted my time and I wasted what little I had to see this piece of crap that I was better than. That just don't work. I don't care what you watch. I don't care what it is. It could be sports. It could be, one thing about sports, sports at the level like, you can say this player is no good, but you're not getting on that field and you're not getting close to that level. So that's why sports keeps elevating, although it has its own thing going on. But musicianship and artistry has to elevate past its patrons. Has to make the audience awestruck, like, oh my God, I see you perform and I left there. Was it worth your time? Way worth my time. I had nothing to do anyway, but it was way worth my time. Was it worth your money? Man, I was on my last dollar. It was, worth my money. I would pay to see them again. Hey, hip hop ain't made that up. You had artists in the circus back in 1870 and 1890 and 1910, where artists had to like die on stage to make people had no money. Like, you go, I got no money. How about time, man? I'm tired. So the performer had to go like oh, that's why James Brown. Let me tell you. I got about 5 minutes. James Brown said, look, you couldn't take your eyes off James. It was like you could not, like the films just don't, they do not tell the story. Being there live, like what is he doing? I remember one time I seen his daughter. This was a James Brown tribute. She mimicked her dad to the T. And I swore, her head is gonna fall off. I mean, she was doing it so fast, I was like, yeah, her head was going. I was like, what? Yo, I mean, see, you hear all kinds of crutches now. Like, oh, well, because EDM is coming so powerful, is that, it makes some rap artists seem like they're not doing it, and plus videos, and this just makes people just kind of like, no, I'm telling you, when the artist is at the peak of their connectivity and they connect with their other members, I don't care what it is, and they're coming at you like this, as a collective effort, yo, there ain't nothing, a video could be better, I don't care, videos, fireworks, people popping up out of the floor, like EDM, which is what, the reason EDM is so powerful because performances got so whack. So you got one person who controls the climate and the lights and the mood and the pitch, and people gonna come there and submit to that. But when you get a collective, that's why bands got like the bass and the guitar, the drum at the most simplest level. They gotta be in sync. If they're not in sync, you're like, something's wrong. If a hip hop act and the artist and the DJ and the rappers and the dance element, if they ain't in sync, you're like, they're all over the place. You're like, this is whack. But if it's in sync, you ain't even gotta love it. You gotta like, look, I don't even like their music, but when I see them, I can't even explain it. They just blew me away, which made me like the music. That's the story of Public Enemy. I mean, our music is like, it's like noise and all that. So people were like, well, I can't just quit it and just, I like it because you ain't gonna go out and listen. Like Eric B. Rakim, like Rakim is just like, he's like the master of words. He sounds so great. The music was like, it makes you just like, Public Enemy was like, it's like taking the needle and throwing it across. So people didn't get it, but when they saw us, like, oh, I get it. I I understand what bringing noise is about. So they went from performance to the record with an understanding of it. So you play a lot of Public Enemy into like, it's like explaining hockey to somebody that loves basketball. It's like, the first time it's like, what are they doing? Why is it so fast? They shoot that little thing around. But that's where we come from. And then it's like, wow, okay, there's something to that. That's why all the elements got to be in place. Performance art is very important. So that's where we come from.
We're going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you all. I really